It is my honor this morning to introduce to you the pastor who will lead us in the invocation. It is Reverend Jacob Oresso, who is the interim pastor at Hudson's Trinity Lutheran Church's Family Center, the big red building at 12 and UU. So if you'll all stand for Reverend Oresso, he will lead the invocation.
Yeah, good morning. It's such a great joy to be together with you today, and I'm going to ask us to close our eyes as we open with prayer. Let's pray together. Our dear Heavenly Father, the creator of the heavens and the earth, we want to thank you so much today. We thank you, Father, for the bright sunshine. We thank you, Father, for the air that we breathe. We thank you, Father, for the strength in our bodies. We thank you, Father, for the wisdom that we have that we can call this today. We thank you, Father, for the strength that you've put in our bodies that we can work. And we thank you, Father, for the wisdom and the minds that you've given us to serve your people in this community. And oh God, as we begin this meeting today, how we pray that, Lord, you will grant us wisdom, you will grant us understanding, and you will also give us inspiration as we talk together, as we share together, but also as we see how to better help this community. So we thank you, Father, for what you've continued to do within St. Croix and the Hudson area. We thank you, Father, for the different leaders that you've appointed to lead your people. And I want to pray for every leader that, oh God, you will continue to grant them wisdom and also to use them even to serve your people better. So we thank you, Father, for every person and leader that is presented here this morning. And even as we spend time together to talk, to brainstorm together, to share together, we want to pray that, oh God, your Holy Spirit will just move in our hearts, but also in our minds. So may you bless our meeting and our time together, and every discussion that takes place today, may it bring honor and glory to you. We thank you for all that you've done for us, because you are our loving God, our loving Father. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Let's join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Thank you, Reverend Oresso. Well, at the first meeting of a new term, the order of events and the activities to occur are slightly different, and so this morning our next order of business is to administer the oath of office, and our three circuit court judges are here to do that for us. Judge Lundell, Judge Needham, and Judge Black. Gentlemen.
Would everybody please stand, raise your right hands, and repeat after us?
I state your name. Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of County Board Supervisor to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to all of you.
Yeah. You've got it memorized. So many of you have been reelected so many times now. That's good. That's the first time I can remember doing it that way.
Very effective, very effective.
It's whatever works. All right, well, congratulations, and we hope to have an ongoing relationship, a cordial, mutually beneficial relationship with the board.
Thank you, congratulations.
Thank you, judges. Everybody has on their desk supposedly an official oath to be signed and returned to the county clerk, Cindy Campbell here. And my understanding of the way she's going to do this, there's a sort of ransom involved. When she gets this back from you signed, she will give you your certificate, which is a certificate you Rotarians might recall is suitable for framing. So they can go ahead and sign it, right? We can all sign those. There you go. All right, the next thing is to proceed with a roll call now that we are all officially sworn in. And the clerk will perform the roll call at this time.
Lois Burry. Here. Brian Hurchin.
Here.
Julie Spear.
Here.
Joel Hurchin.
Here.
Bill Peavy.
Here.
Gerald Peterson.
Here.
Charlie Grant.
Here.
Tom Dowd.
Here.
Chuck Mills.
Here.
Dick King.
Here.
Wallace Habhager.
Here.
John Mortensen.
Here.
Esther Wentz.
Here.
Jean Ritz.
Here.
Gordon Awesome.
Here.
Tom Kaplish.
Here.
Chuck Strumke.
Here.
Richard Marzoff.
Here.
Sharon Norton Ballman. Ronald Troyer.
Here.
Roger Ripholtz.
Here.
Bill Cranmer.
Here.
Daryl Standifer.
Here.
John Borup.
Here.
Clarence Malick.
Here.
Don Jordan.
Here.
Ron Raymond.
Here.
Cindy Leonard.
Here.
Linda Lucky. Stan Kruger.
Here.
Denise Gunderson.
31 present, a majority will be 16 then. We have some county supervisors who are not, did not just take the oath, so they're former supervisors and have been good enough to come in so that we can make the presentation of their plaques for service at this time. So if those who are here would step up to the lectern, please, we'll do that. Step right up.
May have been better if you hadn't heard all of it. I thank you for all the good friends I've met and for the good years I've spent on the county board. It's been my pleasure. I hope that I may have been one that helped solve some problems instead of creating them. So with that, I'll say thank you and take good care of my county.
I've heard that behind every good man there's a woman, telling him he's wrong, of course. And Art's wife is standing back there, or is sitting back there. Would you let us recognize you, Elaine?
I thought for a change I would be short on words this morning. It's been fun serving. It's great to serve with people who care so much about the county. And I want to thank my son. Michael, stand up.
Michael?
He has served by my side over the last 4 years. So thank you guys all for your service, and I look forward to seeing some really good things coming out of the county. Thanks.
Supervisor Mills? Is that a bag of blood there?
Hey, we still have the clergy with us here, so just be careful. Art, we'd have to have you come up one more time if you would. Art has served for 18 years on the Emergency Management Committee, recently merged with Emergency Communication, and probably nice to some people, serving that committee would be more of a sentence than it's a tour of duty, but Art, we really appreciate your time. Art's gone through 4 governors, I guess, known him by his first name at conferences and so on, and endured floods in Hudson, tornadoes, straight line winds, and so on for those 18 years. Arthur, we appreciate your being on the committee and helping us.
Thank you much, sir. It's been my pleasure.
Mr. Whiting, do you have a report for us?
Well, good morning, and welcome back to many of you. Congratulations to the new members, and thank you to the old members, former members on the board. For the new members, part of my job is to come up after every ceremonial function and bring the whole group back down to earth, so you're not all working off adrenaline. A few things to note from my report. First and foremost, Monday morning at 8:30 at the Cashman Center at the WITC campus in New Richmond, the board will convene for its annual goal-setting session. We've had the administration committee set this up. I think I mentioned last month that Don Selverda of Don Selverda and Associates will be the facilitator. I've worked with him before in some previous positions, and he will put you through your paces, and you will come up with a goal-oriented product at the end. So we expect to go to mid-afternoon. There'll be some food and drink for you in the morning, and a lunch for you, so you don't have to bring your own. You can show up for that. I did pass out to you a list from many of the department heads. I had asked them after some discussion with administration about putting together what they saw as their goals for not only the department but also for the county. Those are for information, and if they help you, terrific. If they don't, fine. They are not meant to override anything that you may have. I think those of you who remember when we had a joint group, supervisors and department heads, that the lists were quite different, but as a whole, the staff certainly recognizes the policy-making responsibilities of the board and looks forward to seeing what you come up with. Other things that I've been working on since the last meeting, been working with the Emergency Communications, Emergency Management Committee at replacing Jack Colvard, the former Director of Emergency Management. We've been looking at this as a contract for service, and the committee has met twice and gone through some interviews, and perhaps even as late as today, we may know who we will select to fulfill that role. I've been sent some information. I don't know how many of you have. I noticed that the chair had been sent some information from Kitty Rhodes on the status of the taxpayer protection amendment that is working its way through the legislature. This is kind of a variation of the Tabor amendment that had been proposed. I've had some conversations with Katie about this. She says that something will eventually be passed. It's worth paying attention to. It's going to change how we are able to do some of the county business, and it'll affect many of the villages and possibly some of the townships as well. As we get closer as the legislature gets closer, I'll certainly keep you informed on that, but it is something that's going to be relatively serious for our organization to respond to. After the presentation was made at the last board meeting about the appraisal for the government center property here, the Finance Committee did meet and authorized me to have a survey of the property done. I'll be following up with that. Hopefully by mid-May we'll know exactly where the property lines are and let the new committee follow up on those findings. I also had sent out a memo on behalf of the administration committee regarding a core value statement and supervisor guidelines from Marathon County. The administration committee has looked at these a couple of times and concluded that they would ask you directly as to whether or not you saw any interest in that for yourselves as the county board here in St. Croix, and would direct the next administration committee to follow up on that. Let's see, a couple other things I'll mention. Been going through some reorganization in the administration suite. As you know, the Finance Committee followed up on the board action from last month. We'll be looking for a new position, a classification compensation specialist. And part of this is we will be moving the county board chair's office over to room 1414, which is the office next to mine. That'll be converted into a conference room with a workstation so that any of you can come in if you need to and have a place to work. It'll be the primary office for the board chair, and hopefully with the additional meeting space we'll have made up for some lost meeting space in the past. And finally, I was up at Health and Human Services yesterday, and an award was presented from the state to St. Croix County. We are now a level 3 public health facility, and we have both our public health director and Supervisor Wentz, who has the plaque, and Barb Nelson announced this yesterday. This is quite an accomplishment for the county, and I'm going to let them take a little bit of my time and explain just what this means.
Several years ago, we had a member of the Health and Human Services Board who always said, "Don't tell me the bad news, give me the good news. I only want to hear good news." Well, this is the good news. We're a level 3 from the state in public health, which means we have attained the highest honor, and this is due to the leadership of Barb Nelson and the wonderful people that work within her department and the other employees of Health and Human Services. It's with great pleasure I present this plaque to her, and she's going to tell you what level 3 actually means. Barb? Thank you.
Thank you. I will give you a very shortened version of what it means. Statute and administrative rule require that certain programming services and levels of those services be maintained in order to be the minimum a level 1. We have worked over time and had attained level 2, and that again is related to the quality of programs and services, the various types of programs and services that we provide. As a result of our going to agent program, which we were here 3 years ago about that, which is the licensure and inspection program through the state, that was our final step in terms of being able to move to a level 3. So we have had that program in place for 3 years. We are required, again by statute, to undergo a review every 5 years, and we just underwent that in June, and as a result we got our 3. So, and I do appreciate, as Esther said, it's really the result of many people, including our dedicated and professional staff in our department, in our agency, the support of our Health and Human Services Board, and the support of the county board, and I thank you for that.
The only sad thing from yesterday was Barb told the committee that she's looking at retiring this year, and I hate to see that, but I certainly congratulate you on being able to do that. The last thing I will mention, as I had met with several of the new board members last week, we had an orientation session out in Baldwin on Wednesday and did a tour of the health center and the highway shop on Friday. That after this meeting, we'll tour the government center building for those of you who can stay, and certainly anybody is welcome to participate on that. It's a very open schedule. I don't have an agenda for it or anything, but depends on when this meeting ends. We'll meet in the back and kind of assess where we are and decide what we want to do from there. So the departments in the building are on notice that you'll be coming around, and they'll be able to take a few minutes and say hi, and you'll get to see some places that you might not otherwise get to see, such as the jail. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whiting. Ending on that high note. Looking over the agenda, as I'm sure you've all been anticipating, most of our time will probably be spent today on organizing ourselves, but we do have some business items to adopt, and we have some reports to hear before we adjourn today. What is your pleasure with respect to the consent agenda? Wentz, Peterson, anybody want an item removed from the consent agenda for further discussion? Otherwise, all in favor of adopting the consent agenda should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. It passes unanimously. All right, well, the next thing then is the election materials here, and I've prepared some things so I don't miss any critical items. First off would be the understanding of what the bylaws require of us. Chair, the election of a chair is the first item of business under the elections. A supervisor must receive a majority of votes, which today would be 16, to be elected to an office or a committee. Robert's rules do not require nominations to be seconded, but our custom is to allow seconds. I, as current chair, will right now appoint Administrative Coordinator Chuck Whiting and Corporation Counsel Greg Timmerman as tellers of the election tellers. When we get some nominations for chairman before the voting for that, the candidates are to address the 3 questions which are listed in our Board of Supervisors rules and bylaws. 1, as county board chair, what will be your major objectives and priorities? 2, if you are elected, are there things you will try to change or do differently as county board chair? 3, how would you describe the style you will use in working with your fellow supervisors, county committees, and county staff? The board rules and bylaws state that the top 3 vote getters for chair go on after the first round of voting, that would be. I'm going to recommend that since Supervisor Jacobson, who was our vice chair, did not run again, so we have a vacancy, and he would normally preside over the election of the chair, according to the bylaws. I'm going to recommend that a supervisor who is capable of doing the job but not likely to be a candidate for chairman preside, and I'm going to recommend to you that Supervisor Borup preside during the election of the chair, if that's agreeable to you. Is that agreeable to you? Then he would serve as chairman pro tem. So probably for purposes of addressing him, you could just call him chairman. But if you want to be formal, it'll be chairman pro tem. And I will trade seats with him until we see where things are going here. Did I cover it all? I'll leave the microphone on, John.
This is a surprise, so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will now accept nominations for the position of County Board Chair for St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. Supervisor King.
I'd like to nominate Clarence Buck-Mallon for chairman.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Supervisor Malik, do you want to address the board?
Mr. Chairman, you should ask 3 times for nominations.
Next time. Okay. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman.
I move that nominations be closed and the secretary be instructed to cast unanimous ballot for our incumbent chair, Buck Mallon.
Okay. I will entertain a motion. Okay. Okay. Stan Kruger was second. Okay. Nominations are closed. Okay. Okay, we'll call for a vote then. Everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you. I certainly consider it an honor to be your chair and, to do the best that I can to perform the functions, to represent you at ceremonial occasions and all of those good things. I did prepare a one-page item here and had it handed out to everybody's desk, in which I addressed the 3 questions that are in the bylaws. If you, I'm reasonably confident you don't want me to read that to you. Am I right? Yeah, okay. Probably the less talking the better from me, but if you want to ask me questions, you certainly can do that now or at a later time. I have, anticipating the possibility, I did prepare a survey form, which essentially is an attempt to compare this term with last term. I earnestly seek your comments and input that would help me to do the job better. And so this survey form, which I'll hand out at a break or something, I encourage you to fill out. It follows basically, the first part of it is the format that we use internally for HR purposes, for performance reviews, for department heads. So those of you who've been here before and involved in department head reviews, performance reviews, will recognize the first part of the form. The rest of it is some other questions that I'm interested in your input on. As the one-page form indicates, you just are asked to, you can certainly write all you want. I mean, I'll take input at any time from anybody, signed or anonymous, and you can either just check marks or put circles on this form. You can write on the back of it, and please return them to the vice chair. And I'll ask the vice chair to receive them all, not show me the forms, but to compile a report based on them and give it to us all. Give us all that report at a future date. Most people said they wanted the person to be more cooperative, and most people said about the same for community sensitivity. Whatever it is, we'll all know whatever that input is, and the originals can then be destroyed. So So I'm interested in knowing how I can do the job better than I did last term, you know. Does anybody have a question they want to direct to me now at this point? Yes, Mr. Strumke.
Congratulations. I really got a question here, based on the last 2 years, how you see the appointment of supervisors to committees. I'm basically specifically asking, is it going to be balanced so that all supervisors pretty much have the same amount of committees, so we're not having some just having a couple and others having 5 or 6?
It seems to me that the job of the chair, among other things, is most importantly to reflect the wishes of the majority of the supervisors. That's the overriding concern. If somehow the desires of all the supervisors could be distilled into one little piece, the chair ought to be trying to anticipate that and definitely furthering the intentions of the majority. When it comes to appointments, it seems to me that there are a number of important factors, and certainly the equitable distribution of people among committees is one factor, but it is not, to my mind, the most important factor. Paramount is getting people matched with their interests and the needs of the committee during the term that we're looking at. Another very important factor is the ability of people to work together. And so I intend to watch very carefully at our goal-setting session a week from yesterday, on next Monday, and see how people interact with each other, and to use that as a factor in making the appointments. And it would be my great hope, working in consultation with the vice chair, to announce those appointments very shortly after the 24th. I know how important it is to hit the ground running with the committees and not have a long period of time pass with vacancies and unanticipated fillings. I know that you, Mr. Strumke, have had a particular concern that you felt you were deserving of more appointments last term. So did Mr. Dowd, actually, and wrote a strongly worded letter at one point. It seems to me it's a part of the job of the chair not always to be popular, and I will do the job to the best of my ability, but it may not, it will not reflect that everybody gets the same number of committee assignments. Any other questions or follow-up? Mr. Cranmer.
Sorry? That way the reporter picks it up.
Whatever items to check here, we don't stand up anymore. You gave me a field day with that one. But instead of standing up, we use when we think of it, we use microphones.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bill Cranmer. I'm from the downtown city of Hudson, new on the board. And I just wanted to suggest something about the committees. Seems to me that if there is a hunger for being on committees, that perhaps the committees could be enlarged. And you might want to consider that.
I'm sure the minutes will reflect your comment, and that's always a factor for consideration by the administration committee. Any other comments, folks? All right, well, let's pick up then and elect ourselves a vice chair. The floor is now open for nominations for vice chair. Mr. Standifer.
Mr. Chairman, it's my distinct pleasure to place in nomination the Honorable Supervisor from District 10, Richard King.
Mr. King has been nominated for vice chair. Are there other nominations?
I
I nominate Stan Kruger.
That was Brian Hurchin. Mr. Kruger's name has been placed in nomination. Did you wish to address the chair?
Yes, I'd like to withdraw my name, if possible.
You have the right to do that. This country does not allow involuntary servitude, and therefore you cannot be forced to take a position.
Well, the problem is we're not like Minnesota where they pay the vice chair extra money, so.
So only wealthy folks like Mr. King can afford to do it. Is that the point? Well, we're having fun now. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Mr. King's name is standing alone at this time. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Mr. Rebholz.
I make a motion that the chair be instructed to cast a unanimous ballot for Dick King.
Is there a second for that motion to close the nominations and instruct the clerk to cast the unanimous ballot for Mr. King? Gosh, the room is full of them. We'll give the honor to Mr. Grant. You've heard the motion. It is to declare the nominations closed and record a unanimous ballot in the minutes. All those in favor of the motion should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. And there we have it. Mr. King, congratulations. You are welcome to take the seat that has been vacated by your predecessor, Mr. Jacobson, who is beaming in the background there. So, Mr. Standifer.
I know that this would be a deviation from normal procedure, but prior to Supervisor King sitting down, why didn't you have him pass by the podium and give us a small speech? That would be perfectly appropriate.
Somebody running the timer, not more than 7.5 minutes, probably. Is there anything you'd like to say there?
I want to thank everybody for electing me. I really feel lousy, and I hope to look better than this from now on. But I've got one whale of a bad cold, and but I appreciate working for the board. Thank you.
When we get to a natural break in things, we now can figure out the exact seating order, and we can take Mr. Joseph Hurchin from the school desk there and get him into a regular place. He told me earlier it reminded him of his grade school days. For some reason, the teacher liked to have him close to her desk. Yeah, you could move over there now if you want to, Joel, until we get around to doing it. I don't. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get it all squared away before long here. All right, let's move on then to the elections for the Finance Committee. Let's see here. Successful candidates, again, must receive a majority vote, and if more rounds of voting are needed, the lowest vote getter will be dropped after each round. There are 5 members on each of our elected committees, so supervisors are to vote for up to 5 candidates. No more than 1 vote for candidate. In other words, there's no cumulative voting. Every name you write on your written ballot must be a different name, up to 5 names. So we're open for nominations for the Finance Committee at this time, and we'll put them on the board in the order they're nominated. We'll give an opportunity for them to stand and say a few words so the new people can get to know them a little bit, and then we'll proceed to the voting. What do we have for nominations for Finance Committee? Mr. King.
I'd like to nominate Esther Went.
Esther Went's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Marzoff?
I nominate Tom Kafflish.
Mr. Kafflish's name has been placed in nomination. Ms. Gunderson? Mr. Kruger's name is placed in nomination. Ms. Wentz? Gerald Standifer's name. Are there any others? 1, Do we have 4? Mr. Standifer?
I nominate Buck Malik.
Mr. Malik's name has been placed in nomination. Are there some more nominations for Finance Committee? 2, 3. We have 5 places and 5 nominations. Are there any other nominations for Finance Committee? Are there any other nominations for Finance Committee? The chair will declare the nominations have been exhausted from the body. There are 5 names nominated, 5 positions. Those 5 persons will constitute the Finance Committee for this term. Very good. Next, and we are proceeding in the order listed in the bylaws. Next is the Transportation Committee, otherwise known as the Highway Committee. Again, we have 5 spaces for the Transportation Committee. Are there nominations? Mr. Dowd.
I'd like to nominate Charlie Grant.
Mr. Grant's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. King.
I'd like to nominate Roger Rebels.
Mr. Rebholz's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Kruger.
I'd like to nominate Brian Hurchin.
Mr. I see. All right, we'll pass that for a moment. Mr. Brian Hurchin's name has been placed in nomination. Ms. Wentz?
I'd like to nominate Dick King.
Mr. King's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Mortensen?
I'd like to nominate Gerald Peterson.
Mr. Peterson's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Raymond?
I'd like to nominate the other brother, Joe Hurchin.
Mr. Joseph Hurchin's name has been placed in nomination for the Transportation Committee. Are there other nominations? Are there other nominations for the Transportation Committee? Okay, the chair will note that the nominations have been exhausted from the body. We have 5 positions and 6 people nominated. So we will, of course, need to vote. And so those persons who receive a majority of votes, 16 or more, will be elected, and presumably 1 will not be elected. Mr. Standifer.
Mr. Chairman, I just make a parliamentary inquiry. What would happen in the possible event that the 2 brothers would be elected? Can we be assured that they get along with each other?
That sounds like one of those personal points of order type of deal. Now, the ballots are being distributed, and you'll be asked to write no more than 5 names on them, of course, and then to fold them once and turn them in to the tellers. But let's get to meet them, and you know, that may help to answer Mr. Standifer's question of whether the 2 brothers are compatible or not. In the order of the nominations, would the persons who have been nominated first of all stand up so that everybody can see you, and then sit down and say a few words about your qualifications? Is that a good way to go? As soon as Mr. Grant recovers from the jocularity of conversing with Corporation Counsel, Charlie, would you kindly stand up so that the new folks can see you, then sit down and talk about your qualifications into your microphone. One at a time, Mr. Peterson.
I've been on the Highway Committee for 20 years, and I think we've advanced a long, long ways with the increase in population in the county. It's been a good job.
All right, and the next one nominated was, name it, Mr. Rebholz. Roger, would you stand up, let them see you, then sit down so you can talk into your mic?
I've had the opportunity to serve on the Transportation Department back in the early 90s when I was on the board, and I've been on the Transportation Committee now for the last 2 years, coming back on the board. And it's been a good committee to work with. A lot of things get done on that committee.
I was elected last year, and I'd just like to try the transportation instead of the planning and zoning where I've been, and see if there's can be some changes made in my position, not the transportation.
I've been on the Transportation Committee for 15 years. I think I've been chairman now the last 6 years. And I really enjoy the job, and I think have had real good relations with the Highway Department.
Now, Mr. Peterson, sorry to to embarrass you earlier.
Thank you. Gerald Peterson, been on the Highway Committee for 2 terms, retired school district administrator, and then I also had the privilege of serving in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Reserve for 23 years. And I have grown up around the highway. When I was 15 years old, I worked for Bayfield County Highway Department.
Okay, then everybody should write no more than 5 names on your ballot, and then fold it in half and pass it down the rows, or otherwise get it into the hands of the tellers. Now, sometimes while they're doing the counting, we can do a little business or hear a report or something, so let me just look ahead and see what we might do. Cindy, you have a load of of things to handle, don't you? Why don't you lead off?
No, I don't know where you want me to begin.
Anywhere you want to. Just grab a thread and pull.
Yesterday, the finance director, Michelle Petrick, gave me these forms here. They're for direct deposit for per diem checks, and you're encouraged to follow that route if you so wish. But I have the forms if you're interested in picking one up.
Just to give a little background on that, all the new members have been strongly encouraged to sign up for direct deposit. It saves the county money. We can lead by example as supervisors by using the direct deposit. And when we set a good example, we can encourage the employees to also use direct deposit. And that can have quite an effect. With around 600 employees, a small savings every month for each one can really add up. It is not a good option to simply tell the employees that they must use direct deposit, because it is subject to bargaining. Isn't that right, Mr. Standifer, with regard to the unionized or represented employees?
We've been told that. Frankly, I'd like to challenge it, but we've been told that by our council.
Okay, well, it may be, and I don't want to overstate the matter, it may be that we could adopt it as a policy and require it of all employees. Certainly we could of the unrepresented employees, but it has seemed to some of us for the last couple of years, 3 years, that it's best if we lead by example. So if 100% of us supervisors could be on direct deposit, that would be best. Now, if there's a case where you don't want your spouse to know how much you're getting, well, we may smile, but I understand that sometimes is a factor. A person can set up a separate account and have it direct deposited to that. The way direct deposit works, and I've used it now for years, is you get, instead of a check, you get what looks like a photocopy of the check. And the very same, it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, comes to you at the same time that you would get a check if you were receiving a check. It's it's the very same day of the month. It's mailed or handed out in the same way as a check would be. and it's an advice to you that there has been wire transferred into your bank, or whatever they call that process nowadays, the exact same amount as is shown on that check. So the money gets to your bank no slower than it otherwise would, and sometimes faster if a weekend or a holiday is involved. And you know exactly what it is. You have exactly the same information for reporting to your taxes and so on. So I strongly encourage you, if you're not doing it already, to please do so. Okay, do you have another item? Mr. Bora?
Mr. Chairman, is it possible to eliminate the mailing out of those documents to cut the mailing cost, or is that administratively difficult?
It is. In my case, I've asked the staff to simply put it in the envelope, but not mail it, but put it in my pigeonhole here.
Which would be fine for me, and it would save that 39 cents plus the time to do it.
When you return a direct deposit form, if you have instructions like that, I just write it in the margin, I think, and maybe it'll happen directly and automatically. Yep, and please provide a voided check, not a voided deposit slip. I'm told that the micro number or whatever it is sometimes different from a deposit than from a check. They want the check, a voided check, to accompany that, so they're absolutely sure they get the magnetic number right. Did you have a question, Mr. Cranmer?
I was just wondering whether or not each of the supervisors does have a box here at the Government Center.
Pigeonhole in the entrance area of the... You and I are probably, there's some chemistry going here. When you forget, I forget. Yes, have you put the names on the pigeonholes already?
And I'll talk to them about that after the...
Oh, and Cindy also has a little lecture to give you, or explanation. Yes, everybody has a pigeonhole, and they're there now, and they will be there. Okay, they're still counting. How about your next announcement?
I've asked Supervisor Raymond to assist next month in possibly taking a group photo of the County Board Supervisors, and he said he would help. He's got the camera equipment. My hope is that we can gather before the May meeting is an evening meeting, so hopefully we can gather a little bit earlier. I'm not sure how we're going to work that, and details will be sent to you, but just to keep that in mind, that we'd like a group photo. The last one we took was 2 years ago. I think it wasn't the last County Board Supervisor. So keep that in mind, and I would appreciate knowing if you're unable to attend a county board meeting, a scheduled county board meeting. If you could let me know by email or phone call or drop me a note.
So dress for the picture as you want to be seen by posterity. These pictures tend to linger and end up on walls and all that kind of thing, you know. So. Okay, got another?
Sure, just loaded here. Caught me off guard here a little bit.
All right.
Handbooks. I am working on updating the handbooks, the yellow handbooks, and I did collect quite a few last month, but I'm still missing some, and I would appreciate your handing in your books so we can update them. I have 6 ready to go, and I would like to meet with the new supervisors after today's meeting before Chuck takes them on a tour to review some of the procedures and what's in the handbook. But I would appreciate you, if you haven't turned it in, to please turn it in, and hopefully I'll have them ready to go to distribute at the goal-setting session on Monday.
This is a heads up, Mr. Standifer. We'll take another announcement from Cindy, and then we'll take old and new business number 1. And then Stan, or Mr. Kruger, you're probably taking the lead on number 2. And whoever's taking the lead on number 3, we'll try to work those in while the tellers are doing their work there. Are you ready, Ms.? Do you have another one?
I could talk about email accounts unless you want to. I do have a list of things that I was going to review with the new supervisors. One of the things we could talk about is an email account. Many of you have email accounts, and some of you have them set up through the county. I've talked to IT and I've talked to Buck about this, and if you want a specific email account for instance, your district or something like that, there is a charge of about $40 per account to set up through the county. And I mentioned it to Buck about just setting up your own, if you're interested in doing this, your own Hotmail or Yahoo account consisting of your district number, something that's unusual. And so if you're interested in doing that or need assistance in doing that, I think that would be useful rather than using the county's email address.
As I understand it, the districts for which we have already paid the fee, it's a once in a lifetime, or once for a license. So those where there already is an email address created for a county district, there's no need to change anything. The new person, if you succeeded somebody in a district that already has an address, you can just begin to use that address. And anybody who has internet access can, with the passwords that the Information Technology Department will provide, can access their email from off the premises, just as though you were going to a website. Indeed, you do go to the county's website to access your email. Mr. Cranmer?
You mentioned this during the meetings that we had for the new supervisors, and I'm a client of Press Center here in Hudson. And so I asked Press Center about this, and they said that one can have a second box, a public box, or a box that feeds into your current account if you're a current Press Center client for free. And so those of you who are already Press Center clients may want to establish a separate email name for purposes of official county business through them.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything more on email accounts? Let's see what happened with the election then. It looks, am I understanding that correctly, that 5 persons got at least a majority and thereby are elected to the Transportation Committee? Okay, and those are the persons under the column next to Finance there. So Messrs. Grants, Rebholz, Brian Hurchin, King, and Peterson have been elected to the Transportation Committee. Congratulations. All right, we turn next to the Public Protection Committee. Again, it's 5 persons, majority vote required. And Supervisor Spear.
Denise Gunderson.
Ms. Gunderson's name has been put in nomination. Mr. Grant.
John Borup.
Mr. Borup's name has been put into nomination. Mr. King.
I'd like to Chuck Mells.
Mr. Mel's name has been put into nomination. Ms. Wentz.
Tom Dowd.
Mr. Dowd's name has been put in nomination. Ms. Gunderson.
Sharon Bowman.
Ms. Norton-Bowman's name has been put in nomination. Mr. Mills.
Julie Spear.
Ms. Spear's name has been put in nomination. Mr. Standifer.
Nominate Ron Troyer.
Mr. Troyer's name has been put in nomination. Mr. Peterson.
John Mortensen.
Mr. Mortensen's name has been put in nomination. I was repeating them as they were recognized. Those who nominated somebody, please verify that the name is on the whiteboard of the person that you nominated. I was not auditing Mr. Whiting as he wrote, so everybody up there? Yep. Spelling correct, Mortensen with the E's. Yes. Are there any other nominations for Public Protection Committee? Any other nominations for Public Protection Committee? The chair declares the nominations to be completed, and ballots will be distributed for voting. Remember, once again, vote for not more than 5 names, not more than 1 name on your ballot. In other words, no cumulative voting. Anybody who gets a majority will be elected, and the lowest vote getter will be eliminated if we need another round of voting. Did you wish to be recognized, Mr. Marzoff or Mr. Strumke? I see your light is on. Nope. All right, we'll have a moment to do our balloting here. Can I get you guys maybe to hand out my survey form and proceeding among the crowd whenever it suits you to do so? Here is that County Board of Supervisors form to give me feedback on my performance and so on. Ms. Leonard.
Are we going to be able to hear them speak?
Oh yeah, oh my. That is so important, yes, absolutely, we must do that. In the order that the names appear from the left column and then the right column. So don't collect the ballots yet. If anybody should ask for another ballot, we will do the whole thing again. Okay, so that it's wide open if anybody changes their mind after hearing somebody speak. Okay, so first of all, stand up, turn around so you can be seen and recognized. Then sit down, turn on your mic, and say something about yourself and your qualifications for the Public Protection Committee. Ms. Gunderson, you're first.
I've been on public protection for 4 years. I've truly enjoyed serving on that committee. Not only is it educational for me, but I hope I've given back to them. So,
Mr. Borup.
There we go, first time out. Many of you in courts in those communities. I also had 4 years as a program supervisor down at Dodge County, including the supervision of all of the juvenile court staff, program design, implementation. Was really an area that I was trained at and enjoyed. I then had 10 years as director at Dunn County, creating the Human Services Department with the board over there. That job also includes closely working with the court system, supervising the juvenile court staff, and then 16 plus years here as the county's Health and Human Services Director with the same responsibilities that you're all familiar with up in New Richmond, including the supervision of the juvenile court staff. So I'm very familiar. I've been in and out of our jail here, worked closely with our judges. I also, when I was in the South during military time and graduate studies, I worked almost a year, it was 8 or 9 months as I recall, doing research and development in the South Carolina prison system. I would enjoy serving on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borup. Mr. Mills.
Chuck Mills. I have been on the Public Protection Committee for 12 years. I've had 36 years' experience as a medic, military and civilian, retired military officer. I've been a medic with the EIU SWAT team here in the county for 14 years. And as many of you know, we have a horrendous methamphetamine and drug problem in this county, but the departments within the Department of, or the Public Protection Department are doing their level best to try and cope with this situation. I'm presently a EMS rescue and counterterrorism instructor with WITC, and I think that this committee is really a functioning and a butt-kicking, go type of a committee, and we have to continue those efforts.
Mr. Mortensen.
I'm John Mortensen, and thank you for this opportunity to, and I was 10 years on the Emergency Management and Communications Committee, Local Emergency Planning Committee for 10 years, also a Red Cross volunteer for disaster services, 13 years. And I would just like to be part of the committee, and I think I would be a big help there.
My name's Tom Dowd. I've been on the county board. This is my second term. I have a little over 10 years law enforcement experience with Pierce County and the Richmond Police Department. I'm a OSHA safety training instructor nationwide, and I'm looking forward to working with public protection if I'm elected. Thank you.
Ms. Norton-Baumann.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Norton-Baumann, and I'm newly elected to this board, and I come with interest to this committee at the urging of my predecessor, Mr. Erickson. He said to me it's a very interesting committee. I would learn a lot, and he felt to contribute a lot, and I would intend to do so. And with that, I'll say thank you very much for the nomination.
I have been on the Public Protection Committee for 8 years as its chairperson. I thoroughly enjoy the work and the time it takes, and will be appreciative of your vote. Thank you.
I'm also a newly elected supervisor, but I would like to be a strong voice on this committee. There's a letter on your desks which states my reasons for wanting to serve on this committee. I'll let it speak for itself. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
I've conferred with Mr. King and Mr. Timmerman and don't feel that it's necessary to call in all the ballots and put out new ones. If anybody has changed their mind after writing a name and now you've heard and seen the people, you could just cross out the previous one and write another one. Are you comfortable with that process? Anybody already fill the page up so there's not room? No. Shouldn't be an issue. Need a few more moments to cogitate. As soon as you're ready, then fold them and hand them to the tellers. And then while that's going on, we'll try to take a little business here. We'll call on probably Mr. Standifer next. Okay. Yes, old and new business. Number 1, resolution approving collective bargaining agreement between the county and highway union.
I move approval of the resolution. By way of background, this is the third resolution that we've brought forward for ratification. The process therefore means that we have one bargaining unit that is still unresolved, but the one that's in front of you comes from the highway. The financial package is essentially the same as those approved last month. There were some specific language issues, but we were able to reach this in voluntary agreement. We started out in mediation, but had one more meeting, and in voluntary agreement did reach agreement with the Highway Bargaining Unit. This has been ratified by the Highway Union and approved, and it is now submitted for our consideration, and I request approval.
Does any supervisor need more information before voting? In that case, all who are in favor of the resolution approving this collective bargaining agreement between the county and Highway Union, the AFSCME, should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. It passes unanimously. Mr. Kruger?
I'm assuming you're talking about item number 2, which is the resolution authorizing the continuance of the self-insurance workman's compensation program. I'll move to put this on the floor.
Second comes from Supervisor Wentz. How about a little word about what this is about?
Well, we do have our own self-insured workman's comp, but according to the Wisconsin state statutes, we have to have a resolution authorizing this each political term for this, I believe, and that we are currently self-insured, and that's the way we have to be for workman's comp.
As I recall, this had the unanimous consent of the Finance Committee members who were present at the meeting, and there was no controversy, no issue raised within the Finance Committee, so that committee is recommending its passage to you. Does any supervisor have a question or comment require further information before voting? In that case, all who are in favor of the resolution authorizing continuance of self-insured workers' compensation program should now vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. It passes unanimously. Would you like a break? I'm getting signals that a break would be considered welcome. The chair will declare a break and we'll get back in 5 or 10 minutes. On the whiteboard, the 5 members of the Public Protection Committee have now been selected, and they are Supervisors Gunderson, Borup, Mells, Dowd, and Spear. Congratulations, folks. Our next order of business will be to select the Agriculture and Extension, Land and Water Conservation Committee. And are we all here? Yeah, I think we are all 31 here. The floor is open for nominations to that committee. Mr. Rebholz.
I nominate Ron Raymond.
Mr. Raymond's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Habegger.
I nominate Lois Burry.
Ms. Burry's name has been placed in nomination. Ms. Spear.
I nominate Bill Peavy.
Mr. Peavy's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Raymond.
I nominate Karen Norton-Baumann.
Ms. Norton-Bauman's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Marzoff.
I nominate Gordon Awesome.
Mr. Awesome's name has been placed in nomination. Mr. Brian Hurchin.
I nominate Joe Hurchin.
Mr. Joseph Hurchin has had his name placed in nomination. Mr. Peavy.
I nominate Eugene Ritz.
Mr. Ritz's name has been placed in nomination. Prepare yourselves for the stand and pirouette, sit and speak thing. Are there other nominations for the Ag Extension, Land and Water Conservation Committee? Are there any other nominations for this committee? We have 5 openings and 7 nominations. In the order in which the nominations occurred, we will ask those people to stand, be recognized, say a few words about their qualifications. and then we will proceed to balloting. Okay, first name is Mr. Raymond's name.
My name's Ron Raymond, and I'm currently on the Ag and Extension Committee, and have been chairman for the last 2 years. As you're probably aware, it includes Ag and Extension, Land and Water Conservation, and now the Parks Department. And I think from my standpoint, what I bring to the party to some extent is I was on Planning and Zoning and chair for some number of years, which included parks, and again was a land use oriented committee. I've had extensive background in the parks, as some of you know, with the Perch Lake Park. Land conservation, water conservation has always been of interest to me, and I think what I bring to the party is a balance of environmental concerns, but also maybe a realistic approach that we're a growing county, a growing area, and we've got to find that middle ground that allows us to save our resources and get the job done, if you will. And from an extension standpoint, I've spent a number of years with the agents. I was a 4-H'er when I was a young kid, and so I think I can do a good job and bring some benefit to the county. Thank you.
I also have been on the Planning and Zoning and the Ag and Extension and Land and Water Committees for the last 4 years. I think it's an advantage to be on the Land and Water Committee as well as Planning and Zoning, because a lot of the things are interrelated. And I've enjoyed working on the Ag and Extension Committee with the fair and everything that goes along with it, and all the programs that Extension offers. And I would like to remain on that committee.
Mr. Peavy.
I'm Bill Peavy. This is my second term on the county board, and I was a member of the committee last year. I'm one of the few people on the county board that's still actively farming. I'm familiar with all the programs through Ag and Extension, Land and Water, and I'd like to continue to serve on the committee. Thank you.
Ms. Norton-Bowman.
Hi again. Thank you for this nomination. I feel that the information and life experience that I have would serve this committee very well. I owned and operated a dairy farm for nearly 20 years. I still own farmland in another county. I was an extension homemaker, which has now changed the title, for almost 30 years, and I was a 4-H leader for a number of years. I'm very interested in land and water conservation, and in this fast-growing county, I think that we all need to be very careful about what we allow to happen to our wonderful resources. I truly appreciate the beauty in this county. With that, I'll say thank you, and I'd ask for your vote.
Mr. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Gordon Awesome from Kinney Connect in Warren. I'm sorry. I'm Gordon Awesome from Kinney Connect in Warren Townships, District 15, and I got elected, took over Jan Zorb's position. She didn't run again, and she was on this committee, and it's an important committee, I think, to our area. People are very concerned about the balance between ag preservation and development and land and water conservation and natural resources. And so I'm very interested in those issues. My business experience, though, is not directly related to that. I've been involved in historic restoration of 8 buildings and urban redevelopment, but I think it's related to the conservation issues here. I think that at least on my brief examination, that the county doesn't have enough parkland, and I'd like to talk about maybe at the goal-setting session, examine if there are ways to increase the county parkland as our population grows. So those are some of the issues I would be interested in, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Joseph Burchin. Here I am again on the table. Bill TV. I'm a farmer, Pauline Township. Thank you.
I worked for the Department of Natural Resources for 29 years, and I worked with this committee all those years. And so I had a pretty good background before I started. So I'm on the committee now, and I'd like to continue, because I'm pretty well versed in conservation practices, being having 50 years experience at it, because I continued working in the forestry upon retirement in 1984. So I've been consultant forester for 22 years now. So anyway, I'm very interested in all conservation aspects and with extension, because I worked with them for all those years.
Mr. Jordan, it strikes me that you might be called on to explain about old and new business number 3, so you might be thinking about that when we get to that. And see, number 5 would be coming from the Land and Water, so Mr. Raymond will have that. Number 6 would be coming up from Public Protection Committee, I would recommend. Oh, is it planning and oh yeah, that's planning and zoning. I'm sorry. So that yeah, whoa, heart attack time. Ms. Burry will probably pick up on that town inspection road agreement deal when we get to that. We've got, let me think here. Mr. Caffwish had to leave for another meeting relating to River Falls business, so we're now 30, but it still takes 16 as a majority, you know. Just to cover that point. Next, we supervisors buy our own coffee and sweets back there. You may have heard there is no free lunch, there's no free coffee either. And so next meeting, May meeting, I'll bring a check or $10, and the clerk manages the coffee fund. Mr. King has been our collector in the past, but now that he's risen to this exalted office, perhaps it would be beneath him. We'll have to, oh, you're willing to do it? All right, well, he'll be the collector next month. So, that $10 will keep us going for a while. Did I get that wrong about exalted position? Yeah. Yeah. You holding up okay under the stress?
Yep.
So far? Good. Some of you are turning in the tan sheets. Please continue to do that. And the back. Oh, the back, yes. Your preferences for committee assignments is on the back, right? Yep. So the tan sheets, that can be done as late as next, at the goal setting session, but the sooner you get them in, the better, of course. Pardon? Oh, no, you have no latitude on that. I've just been told, if you want to stay in the good graces of the clerk, they are due today. Today is it. The tan sheets come in today. On pain of having the name ripped off your pigeonhole. Okay, the ballots are being counted there. Let's see if we can do old and new business number 3, the resolution amending the bylaws concerning signatures on resolutions and ordinances. Let's see, Administration Committee members Leonard and Jordan are here. Okay, somebody want to move it? It's moved by Mr. Marzoff, second by Mr. Jordan. Okay. It's perhaps self-explanatory, but let's see if anybody wants to talk about it. Anybody who got discussion on this? Mr. Marzoff.
I would just like to thank whomever came up with this idea. I think it's an excellent alternative to the impasse that we had prior.
There are lots of fingerprints on it. Came up in the administration committee as an idea that mainly what we have been missing is knowing in advance how the committee voted. You know, who are the members who favored and opposed, if any, a resolution, so that if somebody who's not on that committee wanted to get some background, who would they call? You know, if they, and so under the deal now, this can become our new standard format. Was it improved after this? No, actually, there's an improved version after it went through the Corporation Council's committee, and it'll show everything that this shows and more. It will show how each member of the committee voted. If they were absent, it will show that. If they abstained from voting, it will show that with X's in columns. It'll of course show whether they voted for or against if they were there and didn't abstain. And if it is practical to obtain an actual signature, the signature will be on there before we see it. If not, the signature will be obtained so that it's a matter of record for the archives. So more information probably than ever before. It should be possible to work within our new 5-day rule, the one that we passed last month, and looks like a win-win situation all around. Any questions? Well, then, the chair is going to call for a vote on this. This is the resolution amending the bylaws concerning signatures on resolutions and ordinances. All who are in favor should now vote aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. And it passes unanimously. All right, I see the count is still going on. Let's take up old and new business item number 4. And Mr. Raymond. Or 5.
I'll move it.
Okay, we have the motion to adopt the resolution approving farmland preservation applications. Looks like this. There was a cover memo sent out some time ago. Is there a second for this motion? Ms. Burry seconds it.
Okay, Hopefully it's self-explanatory. We have some people that want to get new agreements on farmland preservation. Bob Heisey has put out a memo kind of describing what's going on. Farmland preservation has an advantage to the farmer in that they receive some moderate tax benefit from it, and it's a benefit to the people of the county in that it encourages the preservation of farmland, as it says. And in the past, these items have come to the committee and been approved by the committee and gone forward from that. And as you can read in the memo, after some checking, we thought it was proper to bring it to the board for their approval. So the committee voted, as you can see on the resolution, unanimously in favor of this, and we would recommend the board do the same. Thank you.
All who are in favor of the resolution approving the Farmland Preservation Program applications for Helgesons, Jacobson, and Hanson should now vote aye. 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 Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. The count is still going on. Let's look at business item number 6, a resolution approving a town road inspection agreement between St. Croix County and the town of St. Joseph. Ms. Burry?
I will bring this resolution to the floor.
Mr. Habegger seconds that motion. Discussion? Mr. Strumke?
Yes, I'd like to just have everybody turn to page 2 of this document. In general, I would like to address, and then I'll talk about a couple paragraphs in specific, but in the reading that I take from this, and if I can be corrected, I would appreciate it, but I take away from this agreement here that the town has sole responsibility. We've granted them under this resolution total responsibility for the implementation and enforcement of town and county ordinances. And I'm not quite sure that's what we want to do here. Now, in specifics, if you go to subparagraph 1 on page 2 there, in the last sentence, well, actually it's all one sentence. If you read it, or I'll go down to halfway and I'll start there. Town and the county for approval and for all construction-related inspections of said town roads being constructed or upgraded as part of an approved subdivision or certified survey map for compliance with town design and construction standards. My concern is that it doesn't say there, and I would like to amend that in a minute here, that I believe it should say for compliance with town and county design and construction standards. That same issue goes down to paragraph 2 there, where if you go, I'll start halfway through a sentence, I don't think it impacts anything. But the last 3 lines there. At completion of construction to ensure that the town roads being constructed or upgraded as part of an approved subdivision or survey map, certified survey map, are constructed in compliance with town construction standards. Both of those paragraphs, I believe, need to be, because we're giving them authority to act on our behalf, I believe that we need to make sure that we impact in there, or input in there, that they also have to ensure compliance with county ordinances. It only states they have to ensure. We're giving them all authority, but we're not requiring them to also comply with county. If somebody would like to clarify that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. Burry, do you want to call on either Mr. Fedroza or Mr. Timmerman? Mr. Timmerman is ready to speak. While he's coming up, do you? Okay.
Good morning. Dave Fedrosi, Planning and Zoning Director. For those of you who are new, who don't know me yet, our department brought this forward in conjunction with the Town of St. Joseph and with review by Corporation Counsel, and I'm sure Greg is prepared to weigh in on this. These 2 paragraphs in the agreement in general specifically and explicitly leave out reference to county design standards. The state statutes, governing case law, and now our own land division ordinance, which was approved in December, delegates to the towns the responsibility for the design standards if they have adopted their own town road standards at the town level. And that's a precondition of this agreement with the town of St. Joseph, and they have all of those standards contained in their own town road ordinance. And by virtue of state law and our own ordinance, by this agreement, we will defer to those standards. So it specifically doesn't include the reference to county standards. There are standards in the County Land Division Ordinance, which in cooperation with the towns will apply in those towns who have not adopted their own standards. But for any of the towns by our own ordinance who have adopted their own town standards, we will honor them as a part of the county subdivision review process. Greg may want to add.
Subdivision regulation is a little bit different than zoning regulation, and without going into any details, try to remember it this way. Zoning regulation is a county ordinance, and any town that has adopted the county zoning ordinance is under the county's authority. Subdivision regulation by statute is granted on an equal level to towns and counties. So a county can have a subdivision regulation ordinance. Towns can also have a subdivision regulation ordinance. They are equal to each other. And the way that they are enforced is that you enforce the most strict ordinance, or the most strict provision out of that ordinance. We are not granting authority to the towns. We are simply recognizing that the towns have equal authority with the county to regulate subdivisions, and we are deferring to the desires of those towns which want to manage themselves.
Any other questions or discussion? Mr. Cranmer.
I think this is a really good idea. I was wondering about the precedent for other townships, and I do have one specific question about the whereases and under recitals on page 1. And the whereas third from the bottom, it refers to chapters 149 and chapter 168 of the St. Joseph Town Code. But in the next whereas, it just refers to chapter 149. Should chapter 168 also be incorporated in that? I have no idea what 168 says.
I have no idea what the town ordinances say either, so I don't know if that should be included or not.
This has been reviewed and accepted by the town. Chapter 149 are specifically their road construction standards, where all of their standards for road. Chapter 168 is their subdivision ordinance, which has some cross-references as a part of their subdivision review process, but for the purposes of the actual road standards, those are all in Chapter 149. And the town and town council has reviewed this agreement and accepted it.
And the question about precedent?
We currently have an agreement like this with the town of Troy also. And again, as Dave indicated, if towns have adopted regulations and standards, and for example, the town of Troy and the town of St. Joseph in the agreement agree to use licensed engineers to do their inspections and check for maintaining standards. I think that's one of the criteria that the town would like to use in approving any future agreements. And from my standpoint, I don't see any problem with this setting precedent if towns want to undertake this duty. I think we'd encourage them to do that.
Any other questions or discussion before we vote? In in that case, all who are in favor of the resolution approving the town road inspection agreement between St. Croix County and the town of St. Joseph, please vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. I see that we have voting results tabulated from the selection of the Agriculture and Extension Committee, and the persons that have been selected are Supervisors Raymond, Burry, Peavy, Norton Bauman, and Ritz. Congratulations to you people. That concludes the elections. And number 6. All right. Well, department reports. We have 2 Supervisor Lucky.
Did I miss it, or did we decide we weren't going to do number 4 on the agenda?
Oh.
We did miss it.
Oh, I'm sorry, we missed it, yes. I guess it's not too late to impeach the chair if you want to. Start over again today? All right, number 4, Report of Administration Committee. Not to change the bylaws to authorize in-county meal. I scared you guys, didn't I?
No, I just thought that maybe you should just suggest not paying for them, but I wouldn't prohibit in-county meals.
Oh, yeah, it has to do with reimbursement. Okay, by way of background, at the last county board meeting, when a number of changes were being made to the bylaws, one of the suggestions made was that in certain circumstances, when meetings were long and bridged over a meal period, the supervisor's rules should be changed so as to allow reimbursement for the cost of a meal when the meal is eaten within the county. Our rules currently do not allow reimbursement of meals eaten within the county. The Administration Committee talked about the matter at some length, decided that it was not desirable to make such a change, and took no action other than to take no action, to record that it had considered the matter and was taking no action to authorize us to be reimbursed for more meals than we currently are. And so, consistent with our bylaws, when a matter is raised, before the county board, referred to a committee, it needs to be reported back by the committee. And that is the matter. If Mr. Jacobson, who chaired that committee, were here, he would be making that report as chairman of the committee. Any further discussion on that subject? Requires no action. Very good. We have reports today to hear from the Land and Water Conservation and Parks Committee and Department, and I see Mr. Heisey making his way to the front of the room. Hopefully we did not do anything to destroy the setup features for your PowerPoint or whatever it is. For those of you who don't already know him, this is Mr. Bob Heisey, the department head of the Land and Water and Parks Committee Department, and he also operates under the title of County Conservationist. Is there anything further you wanted to say, Mr. Raymond, as chair of the relevant committee, about Mr. Heisey or the report that is to follow?
I think you said all the things I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry to steal your thunder if that's what it was.
As always, we always have.
We want to hear you curse.
No, you don't. Yeah, get Tom. This has been locked by Dave.
Okay, well, while the electronics and whatever's information technology is being worked on, I would suggest that before you leave the room today, those who were elected to elected committees, gather and decide on your next meeting, okay? Well, every single committee has got at least one new person on it. And so make sure that, you know, everybody knows when they're supposed to meet and where. Ms. Spear.
Public Protection will meet on May 20th, May 10th.
You have to sign in.
12, I'll get it yet. May 12th, 8:30 in the morning.
Your standing meeting date means the next meeting is May 10th at 8:30. To the new members, have their calendars out to make sure that's going to work. Mr. Grant.
Well,
May 9 and 9, are you open? Pull out your calendar there. Yeah, you're in charge of treats.
Well, wait a
Ms.
minute,
Burry?
where is it?
Ag and Extension meets on Tuesday, May 2nd.
Are you open at, and that's pretty much an all-day meeting?
All right.
With a lunch that is not reimbursed?
Right. We meet in the morning, go for lunch, meet in the afternoon.
Huh?
No, we go for lunch.
And finance, Mr. Kruger?
Finance meets May 11th, I believe. Or did we have that changed? Changed it to May 8th at 1 p.m. That's a Monday at 1 p.m.
Mr. Cafflish has left, so that really is no help anyway. Why don't it's best to be sure that an agenda gets done and everything. So for public protection, Ms. Spear, the chair, will just name you the convener of the committee, responsible for doing an agenda and getting things started until you have an election and so on. Mr. Kruger, would you convene the finance committee? Mr. Raymond, the Ag Extension Land and Water Conservation Committee.
Yes.
And you, Mr. King, I'll bet you already got it underway to convene the Transportation Committee. Okay. When we do the appointments, we'll name a convener for those appointed committees to get things off and rolling. Looks like you're in operation there, Mr. Heisey.
It looks like the electronics are finally working, so we're ready to go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, County Board Supervisors, for the opportunity to provide a short report today on behalf of our Land and Water Conservation and Parks Department. In your packet that you received, you should have received an accomplishment report for 2005 from the Land and Water Conservation and also from the Parks Department. Also want to bring to your attention, I put a flyer in front of each one of your desks or your chairs today advertising an Earth Day event that's going to be taking place at the Hudson Middle School this Saturday. Our department, as well as Jennifer Havens from recycling, will be a part of that. And also I put in front of your desk today a copy of our outdoor recreation plan. It's the CD that you have in front of that. That's the format you have. Should you want a hard copy of that, give me a call. I'll provide that to you. We're in the process of making some of those available soon. What I'd like to do is just share with you this morning some projects or issues that are taking place within the department over this next coming year that I think you need to be aware of. According to some information that was recently released and came across my desk was the U.S. Census Bureau that St. Croix County is the 78th fastest growing county in America. And we're the only county in Wisconsin that made the top 100 list. And that's nothing really new to us. We've been on that top 100 list before. What is new and something that should be of some concern is that as urbanization and suburbanization continues to grow in our areas, as that impervious surface also takes place in our watersheds. As little as 10%, we begin seeing some effects to our contributing waters of St. Croix County. And 10% really isn't that much. And much of our work in our Land and Water Conservation Department looks at the protection improvements of these water resources. There's a direct correlation that can be made between water clarity and property values. And that makes a lot of sense. The better your water clarity or quality, the higher your property values, or more people are going to pay for your property, at least on the water's edge. However, there's other research that has been done by Texas A&M University that shows property values also increase, attributable to the water quality improvements, although at a lesser percentage as you proceed away from that water's edge. Up to 2,000 feet away, they can show an increase in property values in a relationship to water quality values of that water surface. My point here is, in St. Croix County, we have many water resources that are classified on the DNR list as exceptional or outstanding water resources. These are finite water resources. And I think that they are extremely important to St. Croix County, not only for the aesthetic value and the social values, but also for recreation, tourism, and our overall economy of St. Croix County. Many of you know that our Land and Water Conservation Department provides service to the Planning and Zoning Department and Committee on the review of erosion control and stormwater plans and inspections on all major and minor developments in the county. And over the past decade, we made tremendous improvements working with our developers and engineers on installing these practices on these public improvements. And it's always nice to come back and give yourself a pat on the back and seeing that your work is actually taking place. However, I don't want to get that complacent in there, because I think we got a lot of work yet to do. Our land division ordinance doesn't cover once we get off of those public improvements. Once we get into the house development, our land division ordinance doesn't work. And many times on inspections, we've seen this time and time again, where we make great strides in public improvements, but during house constructions, much of our work is negated. And folks, I tell you, we can do better than this. I think through an erosion control and sediment control ordinance in the county that would start looking at 1- and 2-family dwellings on this, I think we can make great strides and make great improvements on this. During the time being, I think what we need to do is ramp up our building inspectors out there and make them cognizant of what's going on and see if they can make improvements while they're out on site. This is I threw this slide in here because this is a before and after, and this is a project that had been taking place on Tiffany Creek. This is our property right along the fairgrounds in Glenwood City. And we did about a 2,000-foot stretch of stream improvement on that property last year. And over that time, we not only received a number of compliments on that project, but we have 2 adjoining landowners downstream that came to us looking at installing a conservation easement on their properties and looking on continuing this project from where we terminated this project down to the St. Croix County, Dunn County line. Should the conservation easements go into effect and be approved by the DNR, then our department will begin looking forward to grant funds and continuing the stream improvement all the way down to the county line. Citing legislation. I just wanted to bring this to your attention. May 1st, this citing legislation goes into effect. And what it is it's a state law that starts dealing with concentrated animal feeding operations that exceed 500 animal units. 500 animal units equate to about 360 milk cows or about 500 beef cows. And essentially, in a nutshell, what this legislation does is preempts any county ordinance that deals with feedlots or restrictions of animals that we have. It really reduced local control. That's where we're at. Currently, how we dealt with expanding operations in the past was through a special exception permit. Now with this law in effect, what the applicant will have to do is meet the minimum state requirements through those 6 essentially worksheets or workbooks. If the applicant meets those requirements and the minimum state standards, that application must be approved with no conditions. That's where we're at right now. We have 6 months. We have a 6-month grace period on November 1st to either adopt the citing legislation as an ordinance or reference it in our existing ordinance to regulate these facilities. I'll move into the Parks Department report. This is a comparison on the, I guess it would be on my left-hand side. It shows the parks, Glen Hills Park, Homestead Parklands, and Troy Beach abbreviated, and then consecutive years ago across and the amount of revenue that we received in each one of those parks. And as you can see, in 2005, it was a fairly, well, we did increase on each one of the parks over that year. I think that was attributable to the exceptional seasonal weather that we had in 2005. We had a warm summer and many weekends that really didn't have much rain, and I think that's what we contribute the usage to. Warmer weather, more usage. This is another project I wanted to bring your attention to. This is, we've been working with timber thinning in each one of our forests. Our Kinnickinnick Forest, our Stanton Forest, Glen Hills Park, and also Pine Lake Park. We're about 3/4 complete with that project to date. We have the Stanton Forest yet to complete. We expect to complete that project by mid to late October. Just to tell you where we are, volume-wise on the cordage removed, we're ahead of schedule. The forester essentially underestimated the volumes coming out of there, and so what does that equate to? As long as everything follows suit on the Stanton Forest, we should receive more revenue on that project than what was originally planned. Again, I can give you a better report once the entire project is complete. I threw this slide in. This is a fishing pier that had been installed at Homestead Park. The reason I installed this is we're going to be installing a very similar pier at Glen Hills Park this year, along with a concrete handicapped accessible walkway that would lead from the parking lot area down to the fishing pier. And in preparation of that project, knowing that was going to take place this year, this past winter, we installed, with the help of the pre-release crews, DNR staff, and park staff, we installed 14 fish cribs, which provide fish habitat for out in Glen Lakes. And the fish cribs were strategically placed in a semicircle that would provide optimum casting distance from that pier. So that'll be a good project for this year. Actually, this whole winter had been a good year for getting a lot of projects done. This is before and after of Pine Lake. This is some of our shoreline of a Pine Lake Park, and you can see over the years we have tremendous erosion and bank erosion on our property. With the assistance of land conservation staff, financial assistance from our Lake Cluster Priority Watershed, we're able to make improvements to about 500 feet of that shoreline restoration on Pine Lake Park. Also want to bring to your attention that I'll probably be before this group here in the next month or two seeking your support for authorization to send in a grant for additional work at Pine Lake Park. What we want to do is totally improve that whole boat landing at Pine Lake Park, and it's a total redesign. Right now, we reviewed the plans with DNR, but we had to go back and get all the permits in place before we could submit the application. So that's where we are with that project right now. And again, that's my report. Just to let you know that all this work could not be completed if it wasn't for the support of the County Board Supervisors, our Finance Committee, our direction and leadership from our Land and Water Conservation Committee, and our dedicated and committed staff, your employees from St. Croix County. And again, thank you very much.
Any questions for Mr. Heisey?
Yeah, any questions? Buzz?
Thank you. At the Wisconsin Counties Association annual conference last fall, I went on that road trip out to a modern multi-head dairy farm, and there was some discussion about methane recovery in that part of the state. And I haven't heard much about that in our county, but I was wondering if there are large feeder or dairy operations that are involved in methane recovery.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. In fact, we have some producers in St. Croix County that I would say probably are the leaders in the state of Wisconsin right now as far as really pushing that, call it the dairy industry, forward. We have methane digesters at least in one facility right now, and if I just take a few minutes to explain how that all works, it's a process, it's a chamber, if you will, and it's very temperature controlled. It's a bacterial jungle, if you will, that breaks down the manure from that product, exports that methane. The methane is exported, scrubbed, produced to a natural gas, sold off-site. The solids, or if you call it the slurry, then is separated into a solids and liquids. The solids are then used back under the cattle as bedding. The liquids now are being filtered nearly to drinking water standards. We're not quite there yet, but it's being discharged to the surface waters. Eventually that technology will be there where that water will be recycled back to the cattle, and we'll almost have an entirely closed system. Eventually there's going to be products that have to get out to the field, but the industry is really changing from what it used to be. Good point, thank you.
How many such operations do we have?
Oh, we have one with a digester, methane digester right now. We have two facilities, one that will probably take place this year as an installation, and I have another producer that came in and is really penciling that out right now, and I think it'll probably go.
Does your office conduct any in-service training for farmers that might be interested in that?
In-service training, I guess what I would advise them to go to some of these other producers. They're going to get a better idea of what it's all about by going to those producers than probably coming into our office. But we'd be happy to talk to them, and essentially that's where the technology is going.
Robert, you might point out we've got one producer doing ethanol.
Well, are you talking about Vreese? Yeah, John? Yeah, I thought he produced that scrubbed it and produced it into a natural gas and sold it to 3M. That's where I thought it was going to go.
No, he's selling it to Excel.
Is he selling it to Excel? Okay.
Yeah, natural gas to Excel.
Okay, excuse me.
Thank you there are some more questions. Mr. Strumke, then Mr. Cranmer.
Yes, thank you. I would like to just ask a couple questions here real quick. As we're taking a natural fertilizer from the fields and recycling it, and in many facets that's a good thing, but crops need fertilizer, understanding crop rotations and everything else, farmers are still going to put fertilizers on there, and if they're not putting natural fertilizers, manure, out there, they're going to be putting fertilizers out there that are predominantly petroleum-based. And, is there any discussions on the pros and cons on one versus the other?
Can I just answer that, and you want to?
I can answer.
All right, very good.
The byproduct, the solids, is still got fertilizer in it. It's better fertilizer, and it's odor-free. That water, if you'd pump it out into the fields to the irrigation, it would be odor-free. There would not be any smell there. So by doing this with this digester, it takes all the odor out of there.
Yeah, eventually, you're going to get to the point where you're still going to take material out to the fields. It's not an entirely closed system, but it's made great improvements from where we've been.
Understanding that, I appreciate that, but it doesn't really get to my question. It was my understanding in your explanation, it takes the manure, processes it, puts it back underneath the cows for bedding, goes back into the processor, gets processed, goes
Yeah.
back under the cows for bedding. The water becomes odor-free. The question is, are both these products losing their nitrogen and other nutrients that are good for crops in our processing in both the water and in the solids?
Sure. The liquids themselves, Chucks, are being filtered, so you won't have the nitrates and the phosphorus in the drinking water. What Stan said is true, is you're going to still have solids that are going to be going back out to the field. Those still have nutrients in there. As far as whether it be a nutrient management plan, we would be reviewing those 6 worksheets with the applicant.
And then
And then our report would go back to a board of adjustments, whoever committee at that time is going to be working on these type of applicants. That's who we would report back to.
Well, I was wondering about the post-application actual farming. I was wondering about inspections to make sure that things aren't getting into the water stream, for instance, the groundwater.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
surface
That's a
waters.
good point, because you're right. After you go through the initial application, what goes on afterwards? That's the missing link on this, okay? Because again, the state legislation really ends there. Our responsibility ends here. What about the future inspections? In the past, when we had conditions put on those permits, then we would, as staff, we would be going back out to those facilities and making sure those conditions were in place. This eliminates that. I'm not saying this was good legislation. I'm just saying this is what was passed.
So is nobody in charge?
Huh?
Is nobody in charge of the inspection process?
We're in charge during the inspection process. After this is approved, I would say there's little enforcement. I'm just telling you.
Well, there are a couple of proclamations that pertain to this subject matter that can be announced at this time. They will come up before we have another board meeting. Soil and Water Stewardship Week is April 30 through May 7. So we have that recognition of Soil and Water Stewardship Week. And then before our next county board meeting, we have Drinking Water Week, which has been vetted past the chair of the Ag and Extension Committee. We all recognize how important drinking water is, but constant reminders are appropriate. Drinking Water Week will be observed in St. Croix County the week of May 7 through 13. Thank you, Mr. Heisen.
All right, thank you.
We have today the report from the Planning and Zoning Department to hear, and Mr. Fedrosi, who introduced himself earlier, will give that report. Mr. Fedrosi is the Director of the Planning and Zoning Department of St. Croix County. David Fedrosi. You new members might have noticed a camera going in the room. The Hudson area cable company, which has subscribers in North Hudson, Hudson, and River Falls, has I guess still a part-time staff person, Nate Skoog, who is here, and he's typically the one who takes the film, and then it is shown. It's sort of, it may be helpful to people in those communities who have a hard time falling asleep. They have us to watch. But actually, we may see some changes. We have, it has been suggested that the layout of our room does not lend itself very well to television, and Actually, the City of Hudson's City Council chambers have recently gotten some new equipment, and there is a proposal that they would hand down to us the old equipment, and it would be installed in this room in a fashion that there would be 2 cameras capable of being zoomed and turned, and one would be up here in back of the chair so it could see your faces. I'm sure you got used to that, Mr. Troyer. And the other one would be about 180 degrees from that, say approximately over Mr. Raymond's head or a little back there, would get this way and would be able to get a good angle on the screen, you know, without people's heads in the way and so on like that. And then it would not be necessary for the operator to be down there on the floor either. So the current proposal is that, frankly, at no cost to the taxpayers, this change would be made, and then the tapes would be made available in other communities besides just these 3 here, so that more of our constituents could see us at quote work, end quote. Are you up and running now, Mr. Fedrosi? All right.
Good morning. Congratulations to all of you on your election to the board, to elected committees this morning. And I'd like to welcome new members of the board. It's quite an opportunity to give an annual report at the organizational meeting at the beginning of an important 2-year term for all of you, so I appreciate that opportunity. I'm going to, I wanted to mention, you have at your place a copy of my presentation, and I would encourage you to take it, study it, but it will be more helpful to follow with me on the screen this morning. And the main reason is I have included a number of charts that show all of the data on the department for several years as a part of the handout that I'm not going to go over as a part of my presentation this morning. I'll give you some summaries on those numbers, but all the details are in the handout that you can take with you and study more carefully when you have a little more time. But I want to give you an overview of accomplishments and activities primarily focused on the 2005 year with a few comments about things that are going on this year. Our department is organized in 4 program areas, basic program areas of planning, code administration, and land information. We also have all of our support staff organized as a part of a support services unit, which provide support staff service to all the programs throughout the department. And I want to focus on these program areas and some of the individual accomplishments in each area, understanding that all of these areas and the staff, as we move forward following a reorganization in 2004, are looking at ways to integrate our program activities into the future. In the planning area, we have 2 distinct program areas, planning and recycling, and I want to highlight some of the planning activities. The priority for us is implementing our county plan, and I'll come back to that with some specifics in just a minute. During this last year, we had a number of other planning activities that were important for the county. We provided a considerable amount of staff support to the Land and Water Department in updating the Park and Outdoor Recreation Plan. We staff the Hudson Sewer Service Area Plan and doing water quality reviews for developments in this area. We worked with the county administration in reviewing the county property inventory and site plans for some of the major county properties. Intergovernmental cooperation was an important focus in this last year. We worked with some other county folks in our neighboring counties in helping to get the Western Wisconsin Intergovernmental Collaborative off the ground through the University of Wisconsin River Falls. And we've also been providing some staff support to New Richmond area local governments, particularly the city of New Richmond and the towns of Richmond, Aaron Prairie, Stanton, and Star Prairie, who are been getting together somewhat informally, but on a regular basis to try and come up with some cooperative agreements between the city and those towns up there to manage a number of community expansion and development activities. And lastly, an important thing that came up during 2005, we were invited to participate with a work group on the St. Croix River crossing, the stakeholder group, working on the Stillwater Bridge, the St. Croix River crossing bridge. That group put together a whole package of mitigation activities as a part of that process that we had a chance to be a part of, and the county, assuming this all goes through in the next few years, will be an important player in implementing that mitigation package as well. A lot of the focus and basis for our activity is implementing our County Development Management Plan, which was initially adopted in March of 2000. And one of our important activities in this coming term with the Planning and Zoning Committee will be developing a strategy and timeline to update this plan. We have a statutory obligation to bring this plan into conformance with state requirements by the year 2010. As a part of implementing that, we have a number of activities as a part of the implementation program in our county plan, working and supporting efforts to do comprehensive planning at the town level, and I'll talk about that a little bit in detail. Ordinance development on a number of ordinances, participating in rezoning reviews as those applications come through the process. We've also entered into a contract through the county board with the U.S. Geological Survey to do a 2-year project to get a groundwater model, an important activity in the 3 counties, Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix. The regional work was completed on that this last year, and we will be working with them shortly as we have our new committee to do a more detailed groundwater model on a selected site here in the county. And no news to most of you, a lot of transportation projects going on in the county, and we have typically been involved in those in a technical way, reviewing plans, comparing them to local plans and county plans, and giving feedback to county and state agencies on those projects. An important activity that we've been doing in terms of town comprehensive planning has been the Heartland Planning Project. We have worked with 5 towns in the central portion of the county for a little over 3 years in developing town comprehensive plans as a part of an overall planning process. And I'm happy to say that we are coming successfully to a conclusion with this project. We have worked with the 5 towns to develop an overall multi-jurisdictional plan that can serve them as a group. And that plan has been going through Town Plan Commission and Town Board action among the 5 towns. 3 towns have already adopted it, and the last 2 towns will be considering it this next month. This has been a very positive and mutually supportive process, and we're real proud of the outcome with these towns. In addition to the broader plan, covering them as a group, each town has got an executive summary with their own specific goals, objectives, and policies for each of those towns. And it was an important way to design this process, and we've gotten some interesting feedback from the state and other communities on how we've structured this. These plans have looked at oftentimes land use and development policies, both at a broad community base in terms of land use throughout the community, and also looking at some important new concepts such as development density and how to apply that within our existing regulations. And most of the towns have come up with some solid and positive recommendations on not only how they can implement that at the town level, but some things that we can do at the county level to help them do that. And we'll be bringing that forward through our committee to the county board, I'm sure, during this next term. Moving beyond the Heartland Group, as that project winds down, we've started working with the town of Star Prairie to develop a comprehensive plan for their town in conjunction with their Plan Commission and Town Board. We started that last fall and had a kickoff session, and based on the feedback, we've worked through our county extension office in UW River Falls, and they're just getting back results of a comprehensive planning survey report from the university, and that will serve as a basis for a lot of the planning work to come. Lastly, planning staff have been in the lead and engaged with other staff in the department, particularly on an ordinance package of improvements to the land division ordinance and zoning ordinance the last 2 years, to create a process where we can have conservation design subdivisions, a new approach to designing subdivisions, rural subdivisions here in the county. And I'm happy to say that that ordinance was just adopted in December, and already we have several applications in for concepts to bring in subdivisions this way, and we'll be excited to bring those to the Planning and Zoning Committee for their review and ultimately share that with you at the county board level in future reports. Let me talk a little bit about recycling, the other program area within planning. We are the responsible unit for 26 communities throughout the county, and this last year, with a coordinated effort with them, countywide, we recycled over 5,000 tons in those communities of household waste. This is largely funded with state recycling funds. Our grant this last year was a little over $270,000. Important pieces of this last year is continuation of our Your Wasteline newsletter. It goes to every household twice a year. You'll see it again in the coming weeks, announcing our annual slate of programs. And this last year, we had a new initiative to focus on multifamily recycling. Cooperatively with Dunn County, we brought in an extra staff person part-time between the two counties and developed a whole new initiative to work with multifamily residential developments in meeting the recycling needs of their residents. They have some special challenges in doing that. And this program was, in fact, just written up in the February issue of County Magazine. This year, we're going to turn that attention with that kind of a project to the school districts in the county and work with them to improve the recycling programs within the school districts, and certainly that provides educational benefits with all the students. Beyond the basic recycling program, we have a number of special collections we do every year. Hazardous waste, tires, appliances, electronics. These programs are largely funded with user fees and some supplemental grants from the state. We also sponsor through the department ongoing collections of cell phones, batteries, jet cartridges, mercury thermometers, hearing aids, eyeglasses. There's a lot of outlets to recycle all of those things if somebody just has somewhere to take them. Some highlights on these different collections. Our hazardous waste collections last year, twice a year, May and September, collected over 40,000 pounds of hazardous waste from our households, businesses, and farmers. This is one of the most popular programs that we operate with. The program does a lot of good in terms of getting this hazardous waste out of the waste stream, and also does a lot of goodwill for the county. It's amazing the positive feedback we get from the people who come to these collections. Through our appliance collection, we also took 837 appliances through a contract with our vendor, almost 60 tons of material, and all of those appliances and their metals and components get recycled, and we get that verified as a part of the process. We've also been sponsoring tire collections. Our tires were down a little bit last year, but we still took in 40 tons of tires through various collection sites that local governments co-sponsor with us, almost 2,000 tires. This is a shot from the Town of Richmond collection site. Our electronics collection brought in 833 electronic components, over 1,100 pounds of some other small electronic items, and this has been popular. We've done this once a year with committee support. Again, this is all user fees. We're going to sponsor a second collection this fall in addition to the one this spring. Let me move from the planning area to code administration. This is where we do all our ordinance work, including zoning ordinance administration, subdivision review, managing all the POUTs or sanitary systems in the county, non-metallic mining, code enforcement, and had some additional ordinance development work with the staff in this area. Some ordinance highlights. We continue to supply staff support to the Board of Adjustment, and this last year with the board we processed 49 applications for special exceptions and variances. We also reviewed 30 rezonings with the Planning and Zoning Committee covering over 1,300 acres and issued 27 land use permits. One of the things that we've tried to focus on and will be doing actually next week is working more closely with the town deputy zoning administrators and providing them support and additional training. With our subdivision review, we have a technical review committee that includes staff from our department as well as land and water conservation, input from the highway department and county surveyor. This last year was a banner year. It was the largest year for new lot creation through the subdivision review process. We had 36 major subdivisions creating 1,224 lots, 150 minor subdivisions or certified survey maps creating 271 lots for almost 1,500 new lots throughout the rural portion of the county. It does not include the cities and villages. These are just numbers for subdivisions and towns. And as a part of that process, we're normally carrying about $5 million in financial assurances for the highway and erosion control improvements. In terms of private wastewater management and administering the sanitary code, last year we issued 685 private wastewater permits for new systems. About 82% of that, 12% of those systems were replacements, and there's a few other specialty items that cover the rest. About 65% of our sanitary systems, our pouts, are conventional septic systems, and the balance of that are primarily mound systems. We processed 2 Wisconsin Fund applications and processed hundreds, thousands of annual maintenance notices to existing homeowners. As a part of our code enforcement activities, we do code enforcement on all the land use ordinances through an integrated process and program. This last year we had 53 new violations recorded. 58 violations were resolved, obviously some carry forward from previous years. We coordinate this with all the town deputies in all the towns that are under the county zoning ordinance, which are 18 out of the 21 towns. And we also have a lot of support from Corporation Counsel to the extent that court and court action is sometimes the last resort to bring properties into compliance. There's a lot of work from Greg and his staff in putting these cases together and getting successful enforcement, even in some cases where we don't have to go to court. In terms of ordinance development, there was a lot of activity last year. We brought forward a new sanitary ordinance, new St. Croix Riverway Overlay Zoning District, a new floodplain overlay zoning district. We did this through, again, an interdepartmental approach with staff from Land and Water Conservation and Highway and County Surveyor, often reviewing this. We had a lot of state agency review, and again, support from Corp Counsel's office reviewing all this new ordinance material. And as Bob indicated in his presentation, here we go again. The state says we're going to need to make some more ordinance amendments. So it's a never-ending process. We get one ordinance in good shape, and somebody needs us to make some changes to something else. Let me talk and close a little bit about our land information programs, real property description and our land information. In terms of our real property description, this does all the document research to prepare the real property file that in turn is used as a basis for the assessment rolls and tax rolls through all the communities throughout the county. This last year we had over 3,000 new parcels added, a few hundred retired, and right now we have a little over 52,000 property parcels on the ground throughout the county. Our property tax processing this last year went smoothly and well. At the end of the year in December, we got all the taxes prepared and out the door in a little over a week's time, and in a way to help the local treasurers meet their deadlines. This last year, we also we instituted an electronic data exchange with the assessors. We only have a couple of assessors bite on this, but we have several more that are interested this year. It's good for them, it's good for us, because it saves both of us some time in manual entry as the work rolls pass back and forth between us. We also made a number of assessment data improvements to our land information website, and I'll talk about that shortly. That was done in conjunction with the treasurer to improve the amount of assessment and tax data available over the website. And our priority for this year will be to address document processing. We've got a cyclical backlog of document processing to keep the rolls and the files current. And we made some progress this last year, and it's our goal to close that gap during the balance of this year going into 2007. Some other things in terms of land information. This last year we adopted a land information plan that was approved by the state, county board, and that will guide our investments in this program with the land records funds that are established through fees and in the Register of Deeds office. This last year we completed a parcel map conversion where all of our parcel maps in the county, cities, villages, and towns are now all in digital format, and we are maintaining that layer throughout the entire county. As a part of that, and in conjunction with that process, this last year we manage all the rural addresses. We issued 543 rural addresses throughout all the towns as a part of parcel management. And a couple of things I wanted to just highlight. In 2004 we acquired some digital orthophotography. I want to hit that a little bit, and also our land information website. This is a sample of the digital orthophotography that we acquired in 2004. We did this countywide. It was all done with land records funds as a part of the process. And it has been a very popular product with assessors, public and private agencies, developers, even homeowners wanting aerial photography of their properties. And this took place in 2004, but it continued to pay benefits this last year. One of the things that we did was to add some provisions where other parties, public and private, could take the data generated from this project and develop 2-foot contours anywhere in the county at a reduced price off this contract. And we had a great deal of success with that. We have multiple sections throughout the county that have taken advantage of that, and a sizable area around the city of New Richmond that the Department of Transportation has had interest in, where the contours have been developed that will support a lot of more detailed engineering type work on the ground. We've also had the benefit of taking that and building that into a new floodplain mapping initiative that DNR and FEMA is accomplishing as we are here today. So that will improve those products. The products from that process also allowed us to improve a number of the data layers that we have. In this case, our county zoning map. Prior to this process, we had to provide these maps one town at a time in separate files, and the outcome of our orthophotography project has allowed us to establish countywide data layers on a very accurate map base. And lastly, I want to mention our land information online website. This was brought up in 2004, but substantially improved in 2005 as a collaborative effort between the treasurer, the real property lister, our land information committee, and our IT department. We now have 815 subscription users who have registered on the site to use the site on a regular basis. And it has been a tremendous value. We've got a lot of positive feedback, and it's also reduced the amount of traffic and phone calls and such that are coming into the county departments involved with land records, and allow us to focus our energies on managing those records. This is an example. You can search on properties on a property basis, looking at individual parcels. It will give you a list of parcels for an owner in a location, or it will give you parcels oriented by town. It will break down by value. There are a number of search capabilities on here to allow professionals and citizens alike to evaluate property. This is an example of a report that you get description information, valuation, tax information. It'll give you information about late taxes, delinquent taxes, and it's been, again, a highly valuable resource for property professionals. You can click on a part of this, get a map of the property that you're looking at. It's connected to our parcel map base. And in a separate section, there's a complete map search tool, a computer mapping tool, complete with many layers of all the digital data that we have, including those air photos that I talked about, accessible to professionals and citizens alike. A few fiscal notes before I close. Our 2006 projected budget, we're operating with the department a little under $2.25 million total budget. About 2/3 of that are non-levy resources, and the largest amount of that, significantly about over half of our budget overall, are fees and charges. And I'd like to mention last year with a push from Planning and Zoning Committee and Finance Committee, we substantially increased our fees. We're not done. We have a few more ideas that we'll be working with those two committees on going into budget time this year. But the goal is to make sure our fees cover the expenses of managing those permits and ordinances. Lastly, I want to thank lots of people. We work with a lot of people. We work for you, the county board, the Planning and Zoning Committee, Board of Adjustment. We work with those bodies regularly. We don't do much of what we do without doing it with local government. We have a very strong connection, particularly with the towns in where we have overlapping jurisdictions. We serve the citizens and taxpayers. We get a lot of support from other county departments, particularly Land and Water, County Surveyor, and Highway Department. And I have to acknowledge a tremendous department staff. We do good work because we have good people. Questions?
Questions for Mr. Fedrosi? Well, you've covered a lot and covered it fairly comprehensive. Mr. Awesome.
Yes, thank you. You had mentioned... I have to get used to this, pardon me. You had mentioned that you had worked with Star Prairie and the Heartland Group on their comprehensive plan. Did they work with an engineer, or did your department provide most of the planning and services for that?
The comprehensive plan in itself doesn't require a lot of engineering level services. In this case, the town does have its own town engineer that I'm sure will be a part of that review. The town engineers are probably more involved with a lot of the on-ground design review and inspection type services like we referred to with the town of St. Joe on that inspection agreement this morning.
Are you working with other townships or cities now on developing their or updating their comprehensive plan?
We took on we've largely responded to town need and town interest. We've worked with those towns that have expressed an interest to work with us in this capacity. A number of other towns are doing projects in conjunction with other groups or individually. And I know, as I mentioned, we need to update the county development plan, and we'll be talking about that with our new committee. And I think as a part of that update process, we'll be talking with all the communities in the county, especially those who have not responded to the comprehensive planning requirements, to see if we can build a group project and meet their needs as well.
Do you know how many communities or towns have not yet updated their comprehensive plans or created one?
Well, I can't give you a specific number, but I've got to say it's somewhere a third to a half of the communities in the county.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Fedrosi? Well, thank you for your report. The clerk has some more matters to report upon, and she wants to meet with everybody, all the new people anyway.
Scheduled, this is rezonings, scheduled hearings for planning and zoning, Basil Farms, Town of St. Joseph, Egg to Egg Residential, Carrie Licht, Town of Pleasant Valley, Egg to Egg Residential, Matthew Construction, Town of Stanton, 2 parcels, Egg 2 to Egg Agriculture. And then table to a future meeting, pending additional information is Slay Rasmussen, Town of O'Galley, Egg Residential to Commercial. And then just a reminder, if it's all right with Mr. Whiting, that I meet with the new supervisors after the meeting in the conference room across the hall before he takes you on a tour.
Yes, Joe Fight asked me to convey to the Board of Supervisors his regret that he could not be here today. He had, because of his work requirements, had to be on the job, but he certainly appreciated the opportunity to serve as county supervisor and asked me to tell you about that. Thank you.
Well noted, and we'll look for an opportunity to embarrass him and hand him his plaque. What is that date, Charlie? There was
21st of June.
June 21, 12:30, shotgun start, sponsored by the Legion at the Hammond Golf Course. Anybody else? Yeah, bring your own shotgun, says Mr. Dowd. All right. Now, were you just selected to public protection? We taking matters into our own hands, huh? Do we have any other announcements with him? Okay, hope to see you all on a week from Monday for the goal-setting session. Hope you have time to do your homework. This coming Monday, a week from yesterday. Yep. All right, the meeting is adjourned.